Alright, so I got a bit of a product review today. So, if you watch a lot of crafting videos on YouTube, which you probably do if you're watching this video, you've probably seen this stuff called Resincrete, or resin alternative, eco-friendly, whatever. So this right here that I have isn't Resincrete brand, but I do believe it's pretty much the same exact thing. It's got the white powder in it. You mix it with water, 30-minute demold, eco-friendly, water-based, so forth. The mix ratio is the same, 10 parts powder to 3 parts water. So I think for all intents and purposes, I think it's pretty much the same thing as Resincrete. Anyway, I got this one because it was cheaper. So this whole kit was $15 on Amazon. It said it was marked down from $20. It was on sale. So in this kit, you get quite a bit of stuff. So obviously, first of all, you get the powder, the mix. You get these little bottles of colorant to color the stuff. And obviously you get these little mixing / measuring cups. You also get some little plastic gloves, which I threw away because they're the crappy kind that don't work well. And honestly, really, you kind of don't need gloves for this. At least I've found, because it's eco-friendly, apparently. Get some sandpaper. This stuff actually sands really easily. I made this pencil cup thingy here, and from where it shrunk back in the mold, I had a lip there sticking out, and I sanded it. Sands really easy, really quick and easy sand job on this stuff. Comes with a scoop to scoop out your powder. Comes with these little paint brushes and some wall hanging hardware there. Some mixing sticks. And most surprisingly, it comes with 3 silicone molds. So it's got this little trinket dish mold here, and these 2 nice coaster molds. Which, I mean, really a kit with these 3 molds itself would be like probably $10 in a lot of places. I know something like this at Hobby Lobby would be about $10. So this stuff is pretty interesting. I've seen videos of the Resincrete on YouTube, and I've been wanting to try it, but kind of not. The thing that's kept me from wanting to try it is it looks like plaster. The powder looks like plaster powder, and the finished products seem to look like plaster. And it's like, plaster is really weak and brittle. It'll crumble. It's pretty fragile. And I don't want to pay a bunch of money for just some overpriced plaster. Luckily, I bit the bullet, bought this kit, and tried it, and it's not like plaster really at all. I mean, it is a lot more fragile than epoxy resin. There's really no flexibility to it at all. It's pretty hard. It's harder than plaster would be. It kind of feels like ceramic to a degree. I would say it's like a midway point between plaster and ceramic is what it feels like. Has kind of a sound to it and a feel to it, a lot like ceramic. Not quite as strong as ceramic, obviously. But, so yeah, the results were pretty interesting with my first few pours. I really like this material. It looks and feels like ceramic or even stone to some degree. Now, I've got this thin piece here, and just to show you, it is still probably half as strong as resin as far as tensile strength. So it breaks pretty easily. Still nowhere near as fragile as plaster would be or cement mix. So I wouldn't do anything that's really thin. I wouldn't pour any thin stuff. Keychains I wouldn't do because that'll probably break. If you got your keys in your pocket, that'll probably break real quick. But it is strong enough to make a lot of cool things with. So obviously, because it's not transparent like epoxy resin is, there are limitations. So you kind of have to have a solid color. The base color, if you just mix this with water and no colorant, it's going to be white. If you mix colors in with it, it's going to turn, unless you put some black in with the color like I did here, you're going to get more of a pastel color. And as you can see where I sanded it away, it's still kind of a pastel kind of color. You can use mica powder, but it takes an extreme amount. Like, if I wanted to color this, it would probably take more than this whole little container full of mica powder to color it. So if you ask me, it's kind of not really economically worth using mica powder to color this stuff. Now you can always coat your mold in mica powder and then pour on that. I got kind of a nice bit of a golden feel there to this little piece. See, there's the normal side, and then there's the side that side of the mold where I brushed on some mica powder. I've got these other resin dyes. I haven't tried these in it yet. I'm sure they'll work. I don't see why not. So when you mix this stuff, it's actually surprisingly thin. You would think that 10 parts powder and only 3 parts water would make it hard to mix and make it really thick, but it's really thin, almost water thin. And so bubbles aren't a huge concern, though you will get bubbles. You don't really got to mix it super slow. So what I'm going to do here is real quick, I'm going to mix some of it up and pour a coaster. I don't know what color I'll do. I'll probably do green. Green's my favorite color, as you can see. So I'll probably do green, maybe try to match this color. I mixed some black in with this just so it wouldn't be so light of a color. So go ahead and get started here. So for this, I know this mold holds exactly the same amount that this mold held. And for this mold, it ended up being 100 milliliters, I guess, of powder, 30 milliliters of water. That's kind of the easy way to go about this, because that's another downside to this stuff is a 10-to-3 ratio is, unless you do like increments of like 10 and 100 or whatever, you kind of have to break out the calculator if you want to do, like, say if you're going for like 55 milliliters or whatever, you might have to break out the calculator to get your ratios right. But we're just going to do 100 milliliters of powder here. Little more. Where's my scoop? This is, after all, what the scoop is for. That might be a bit too much. Yeah, that's about too much there. Even it out. No, a little more. Close enough. Okay. So I'm going to take my water here. And go up to 30. Actually, I'm going to do a little more than 30 because I do have a little bit more than 100 in there. Now, the mixing ratios, I think it's a lot more forgiving than epoxy resin, whereas epoxy resin you have to have the precise ratios. With this, within reason, you can kind of adjust the amount of water you use. If you use a little more water, it's just going to take longer to cure, and it's going to be runnier. I can pretty much guarantee there's got to be some upper limit on that, where if you use too much water, it's just not going to cure right at all. But within probably 5 or 10 milliliters, you're probably good. Obviously, if you use less water, it's going to be a little thicker. That might be great for if you're wanting to put glitter in it, which I don't even know if that's possible with this stuff, because I feel like the thicker it gets, the quicker it's going to cure up, because it's not like resin. It just depends. This stuff really just depends on the water content. And so the thicker it gets, the quicker it's going to set up. So we got, yeah, just over 30 here. The cool thing is within Resin, again, you can add a little more water. Obviously you can't take water away, but you could add more powder if you had too much water in there. I'm going to start out mixing about half of that in with the water first. Stir it up. I don't really have to worry too much about bubbles here because it's pretty thin. We'll mix the other bit in there now. Just dump the whole thing in. Mix it up. At first you feel like, oh, that's not going to be enough water. There's no way that's going to mix up. But once you get it going, it really thins out. Scrape the sides here so you can get all that powder in mixed with the water good. Once you really start going, it thins out a lot better. There we see. I am going to put a little more water in this because I want to do two separate colors here, I think. Probably both green, but I think different shades of green is what I want to do here. So I want this to be able to last a little bit longer, a little more work time. There we go. And of course, that was a little bit too much, so we'll dump a little more powder in here. That's the thing with this stuff. I feel like the mixing process is a lot more forgiving than epoxy resin. You can kind of just work with it until you get a good consistency. Again, you want a consistency that's a little thicker than water, obviously. Maybe the consistency of milk, I would say. Maybe a tad thicker than that, but you don't really want to go too much thicker than that because it'll probably set up before you get a chance to really, A, put the color in, and B, get it situated and poured. That's a good consistency there. So, before I get this done, I'm going to pour some of it into another cup because I want to do two colors on this. I think because it's so thin, I'm going to probably not get really any kind of good color separation. But we're going to give it a try. I'm going to go with my green here. This does take a reasonable bit of pigment to really get a good color going. So I'm going to mix that in. Mix it up real good. I kind of like that green. I don't normally care for pastel colors, but that's a decent green. All right. Let's get a little more in this one. Uh-oh. I might be out of green here. No, there we go. Okay. We're going to mix that in. Again, I want to do different shades here. So I'm going to add some black to, I think, this one. And actually a little bit of black goes a long way. When you've got pigment in here. Obviously it would probably take a lot of black to make just straight up black color instead of We'd probably end up a shade of gray. And here we've got kind of a charcoaly mess here. I think I put too much black in. As you can see, a little bit of black goes a long way. So we're going to counter that with a little more green. Maybe. This stuff, this colorant here has kind of the consistency of acrylic paint. And I wonder if it's not just watered down acrylic paint. You know what? I'm not going to use up all my green trying to get that color exactly where I want it. But we will darken this up a little bit. Three drops. We'll darken this up a little bit, and then we'll mix that kind of charcoaly color in real good. Whatever. It takes a little practice to get the colors right, I guess. I don't care for this shade of gray, green, or whatever, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead and get this poured. So I want to see what kind of color separation I can get. Probably none. It's probably going to turn into a muddy mess, but that's why we do little experiments to see what happens. So I'm just gonna maybe do like a bicolor thing. Oh, that doesn't. Those colors are actually all right. They didn't look as good in the cup, but they look all right here once you pour them. You can see the green in here. Camera might not be picking it up good, but there is a nice green tint there. And ever so slightly, I think I'm gonna swirl this around a bit. I don't really care what the bottom of this looks like because it's going to be a coaster, but I want to get some kind of decent finish on the bottom. We'll see how that turns out. And with this stuff, if you have a little bit of overflow, like I just did here, it's no problem. That'll break right off real easy. So we're going to set this to the side now. And I think I'm going to dump this excess into a smaller mold, just so I don't waste it. I'm going to try pouring it a little bit swirled like that. That might be interesting. So we'll pour this into a dome mold, half sphere here. Ooh, I hope it cures like that. That's a nice pattern. These colors really do go together. At first I wasn't so sure they'd look very good together, but they kind of do. I can use these little pieces here for something somewhere down the line. Also, I kind of want to, maybe in a future video, explore the possibilities, perhaps, of recycling this stuff. So I'm going to save little fragments and stuff like that, maybe crush them up back into powder, and see if I can add water and maybe recycle this stuff, if that's even possible. So that'd be pretty interesting. So I'm going to give this stuff, I'm going to give about 40 minutes to cure before I pop it out of the mold, just to be safe. So yeah, we'll let this sit for about 40 minutes and then we'll demold it and see how it looks. All right, so it's been about 35 minutes. I got impatient. I know I said 40 minutes, but I got impatient. I think we're good to demold now. So first, we'll try these little smaller pieces here. Yeah, that turned out interesting. It did get a little muddy there, but there is some color separation. Kind of looks a little marbly. This one looks really good. There is a little bit of remnants from where I did this other piece with the mica powder on the mold, and that just really adds to it. I really like that one. And this one, much lighter, but still looks all right. So let's get to the coaster. This stuff does get a little warm when it cures up, but nowhere near like resin does. Like if you have too much volume and it really overheats. I haven't tried this stuff in a deep mold yet, so I don't know if you will get any kind of like flash curing like you would get with epoxy resin. But I might give that a try. I don't see why it would, but it might. I don't know. So let's pop this out. And that looks okay. These little spots here were, I guess, from where I swirled with the popsicle stick. That looks kind of random. Probably should have just left it two colors there. But the bottom looks kind of nice. I like that. And again, I can just pop off the little overflow there. That comes off real good. Quite a bit on that side. So maybe I'll hit it with this. Just that'll come right off. Now this stuff, I would give this stuff about a full 24 hours to fully harden to the point where like these are, where it really feels like kind of like ceramic. But within 30 to 40 minutes you can demold this stuff and handle it a little bit. That didn't turn out too bad. Again, I really like the feel of it. It feels ceramic-y, kind of. And I think you could really make some high-end looking stuff for a pretty low price with this. I did try, because I wanted to see if this stuff would be good for like making ashtrays or whatever, if it would handle the heat. And it does. I took a torch to it, but it discolored it a little bit there, as you can see. But again, at first I tried this with safety gear on just in case, but there was no problem. So I held it on there for a few seconds. It discolors pretty quick with the torch on it. Let it off a few seconds, and then still kind of hot, but not hot enough to burn me. So I think it has a lot of properties similar to ceramic. And though I wouldn't go holding the torch on it all day, because I do feel like it would probably shatter, I think it's heat resistant enough where you could make ashtrays out of it. And I would say you could make coffee mugs out of it, but because it's so porous, even when it cures, it's pretty porous. The problem with making coffee mug or something out of it, even though I would presume it's food safe, would be cleaning it. So if you made a little coffee mug, put coffee in it, because the coffee would soak up into the pores, it would probably be impossible to clean, and you'd probably have forever old coffee taste in there. So maybe, unless you can find a food safe sealer, I wouldn't go the route of making a coffee mug or something like that. But you could probably drink water out of it just fine. Again, I do believe it's food safe once it's cured. I don't see why it wouldn't be if it's eco-friendly. No harsh chemicals in it. I read online that it's, at least Resincrete is, and I'm sure this is the same stuff. Read online that this stuff is gypsum based, which is a lot like plaster, but this is way stronger than plaster, so I know it's not just plaster. And gypsum is also the material that they use in sheetrock, and this is much stronger than that. So even if it is gypsum based, there has to be something else in there that's able to make it so strong and hard, because that's much harder and sturdier than just plaster would be. But anyway, that's the video. I gotta say, I do recommend this stuff, and by extension I'm sure Resincrete, because I can't imagine them being too different. This was the Teexpert PureCure. I'm not being paid by them. As of making this video, I've only got like 26 subscribers, so it would not make financial sense for them to sponsor me in any way. But if they want to throw me some money, I wouldn't say no. But no, they have some good stuff. I use their epoxy resin too. It's really good. A lot of people use J. Diction brand, which I believe that's the brand that does the Resincrete. I've only ever used their UV resin, which is also really, really good. I like this low viscosity stuff. Cure is really good. But with that said, again, I really recommend at least giving this stuff a try. You can use it for like coasters, little pencil cups and stuff. And also, I want to use it for fillers. If you've seen a lot of my other videos, you know I like to do layers with epoxy resin with little 3D objects inside there. And so I think this stuff would be a nice cost-effective way for me to cut down on the epoxy resin I got to use in order to achieve some of those things. So I can make some of the fillers in molds with this stuff and then pour clear epoxy on it and do my layered art that I like to do. With that said, this stuff again is really porous. So if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to coat this in or cast this inside of epoxy resin, I would strongly recommend sealing it with something first. Just that way, because it's porous, it'll create a lot of bubbles inside of epoxy resin. So that's a thought. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this little product review, and see you next time.